I call Claire Hawkey to be followed by Pauline McNeill. Ms Hawkey, please.
Officer, FGM is a sanitised term that allows us to talk about female genital mutilation without dealing with each of these three words. Mutilation of young women leaves scars, both physical and mental, and that lasts a lifetime for victims and also for the communities that practice it. Let's be clear, FGM involves performing quote-unquote surgery on the genitals of young women and girls. These procedures can involve cutting off parts of the labia and clitoris, or otherwise sewing and stitching up the vulva or vaginal opening. These procedures offer zero medical benefits. All they guarantee is pain and suffering. But these procedures are performed by families who believe that FGM must be carried out. They believe that it's the right thing to do, and they believe that FGM is the key to maintaining respectability and standing in their community. And often for the young girls themselves, they see it as a rite of passage from childhood to becoming a woman. In reality, however, FGM is used to ensure a woman is culturally acceptable, upholding family honour and tradition, and ensures that she's seen as suitable for her permitted role as a wife. By damaging her genitals, a community can damage her ability to have sexual relationships and can ensure that sex, instead of being a natural part of human expression, is painful and unpalatable for her. It is, at its essence, a way of controlling a woman's sexual behaviour. The young women who experience this violence suffer in painful and perhaps more obvious physical ways. Difficulty in urinating, sexual problems, problems in childbirth, and wounds that become infected and can lead to further complications. But what about other wounds that are inflicted? Post-traumatic stress disorder among survivors of FGM are at the same levels as those who have been subject to childhood abuse. And research has shown that anger, pain and sadness continue through later life for these women, and that ongoing chronic stress, anxiety disorders and sleep problems are common in survivors. A number of studies have touched on the impact to the survivor, but I also want to consider the impact being part of this abuse has on the community as a whole. How many mothers who themselves have experienced FGM come to decide on FGM for their own daughters? Violence affects not only the victims, but the perpetrators too. Frequently, those who arrange or are complicit in inflicting FGM on children experienced FGM themselves. It begets a cycle of abuse where mutilation is the norm and the pain and suffering that is caused is less important than being seen to fit in. FGM as a way of policing of women's bodies is a double crime. It is inflicted on young women, and then those young women themselves go on to become party to inflicting it on the next generation. But how many of these are true choices, free of coercion and influence from their wider group? When we tackle FGM, as we should also remember the full cost that we are asking young women to pay when they share what has happened to them. We're asking them not only to admit what has been done to them, to discuss their bodies with strangers and people outside their community, but we're also asking them to admit that their community, their family, has been party to it. When we acknowledge a crime, by extension, those who have committed it are criminals. For young women who have experienced FGM, it contributes to the huge burden of emotional and psychological damage that they already carry from the abuse. Presiding Officer, although these crimes are carried out to ensure honour, there is nothing honourable in violence and abuse. Under-reporting of FGM is strongly suspected, and this ties with other forms of abuse where fear and issues of love, loyalty, propriety are entwined to create an emotional net that prevents women from speaking out about what has been done to them. We need to empower women to talk openly about these threats and experiences, especially those who are at risk, or those in communities who we know have girls who are at risk of FGM. This is especially true given the studies have shown that women who have experienced FGM tend to develop psychological conditions which make them withdrawn, uncommunicative or distrustful. The women whose voices we need to hear the most are those who are most likely to be silenced by their experience. Committing FGM is a crime, and I'm proud the Scottish Government has been forthright in condemning it, and I'm heartened to hear so many around this chamber today do so too. We need to consign female genital mutilation to history. And we will do this by ensuring the crime is policed, but also through joined-up thinking around public services and support for the women affected. The Scottish Refugee Council has identified that 24,000 people born in an FGM practising country are living in Scotland, with nearly 9,000 of these in Glasgow. Any small community of this size will need support to adjust to life here in this country that has been more developed and has proactive public services. We must reach out and engage with all communities, but especially so where there is the potential for FGM. We must communicate to women, young and old, that genital mutilation is wrong and that whatever the practices of the past, it's not acceptable in Scotland. We must also seek to amplify the voices of women in those communities who are already standing up against FGM and empower young women to support each other in their communities. Presiding Officer, I welcome that projects such as the Kenyan Women in Scotland Association and Rape Crisis Glasgow's FGM Survivor Support Service are benefiting from funding from the Scottish Government to drive the equality agenda in 2016-17. And I welcome all steps this Government takes to tackle all forms of violence that seek to control women's bodies and police women's behaviour under the corrosive banner of honour.
Thank you, Ms Hockey.